okay. I was okay until I saw your messages. So now I have tears in my eyes. That wasn't fair, y'all. That wasn't fair. Thank you so much. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Mornings with Marvel, where authenticity lives and thrives to create a space of growth, healing, and joy. I am your host, Andrea Lawful Sanders. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And each day we will cover the topics that will bring you authenticity and pure joy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning to each and every one of you. I'm reading your messages. Good morning, Alexandra. Good morning, Viola, Erica, Sharon. Oh, thank you all. It's been a journey. Mova has been, you all already know, I had to take 6 weeks off because I was not feeling well. In fact, my numbers, my I was going to do surgery, and the numbers were, my blood work was so horrible, despite the fact that I was exercising and eating well. And so I had to shut everything down. And you all know the story. If you follow me on social media, my daughter moved in. Our daughter moved in and helped me for 6 weeks. I missed all of you terribly. There was a moment where I wanted to just get back on the air, but they were watching me. I was trying to sneak something in, and they were like, no, 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 no. And so 6 weeks later, my blood pressure is all the way down. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I see your messages. I had to take the time off to get well. I had to. I literally had to. And you all know me well enough that I give credit to the people who have been instrumental in that health and well-being. Dr. Dupree is the first one. Dr. Madelman, who is my cardiologist. I go to see him in another week or so. These are the folks. And Dr. Archer Major, who dragged me into her office and says, you will not die. You will not die. And so we got together and began working. My sister, who showed up and joined the program with me to my health and wellness. I lost 26 pounds. Actually, this morning I looked at the scale, almost 27, because I'm intentional, but I have to increase my protein now so I can go back to the gym. So the weight is going to keep melting off. It's been very helpful. She said, I see you skinny. The weight will keep coming off. I'm just taking good care of myself. I want to get into the meat of this show, but I know I owe you all such a debt of gratitude. So many of you. I can't even begin to tell you, but I just want to say thank you to all of you that showed up, to dropping the things at the house, to making sure that I had what I needed to. Monica went to, where were you? In Lancaster, and she and her husband called and was like, we're in Lancaster, can we pick up some stuff for you? And we did that. She did that, and they dropped it off at the house. Like, you all were incredibly helpful. And so my cautionary tale to all of you is this: if you don't feel well, I had not been feeling well for a while. I'd been coming on the air and saying to all of you that I was just exhausted and I couldn't sustain it and all the other things. And my blood work, your blood work will not lie. I was crashing and burning and was this close to having a heart attack or a stroke. And so I had to take it all the way down. Thank you all so much for, being there and doing what needs to be done. We'll talk more about it in the days coming up, but I want to get into my Nile is Nile, what is his name? David Alexander Jenkins called me and he was like, are we on, darling? I said, we are on. So I'm excited. There's so much for us to discuss. The other David, he and I talked yesterday because there's a topic I wanted to cover this morning, and he sent me some links. I was not home. I was with my sister, and so we had to drive home. And then another friend of mine died suddenly yesterday, and I got the call about that. It was just a lot going on, right? But I'm learning how to navigate the things as they're happening now and just not letting myself fall apart because, baby, y'all's president. Y'all's president. Thank you, Jasenia. I know you were all praying. Everybody was praying. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. So let me read my morning motivation, and then we'll get David on so that he and I can talk. To lead with fidelity, one must be willing to question, listen, and learn. It is the path to true wisdom. No growth happens in an echo chamber where everyone believes what you do and agrees with everything you say. Embracing a difference of thought is one way to challenge ourselves into having a well rounded worldview. You should also remember that while perfection is a goal, it is not always attainable in life. Be kind to yourself through the mistakes too. Read and research in depth and show up as someone who is trustworthy in words and deeds. People will not always agree with you. Your response, however, will show maturity as a thought leader or have you dismissed as petty and vindictive. Either way, lessons will abound to remind you that life is cyclical and whatever you mete out, you will be measured and mirrored when you least expect it. The other piece that I want to say to you is never negate, one more thing, never negate the value of your work by accepting breadcrumbs or, in many cases, zero pay to build someone else's brand and their bank account. And never ever be so eager to be seen and heard that you debase yourself in the process. Your voice matters. Your intellectual property matters. You cannot live on accolades alone. Saying no to anything that does not serve you may be the biggest yes you give yourselves, right? Good morning. Good morning. Whew. Good morning. Good morning. The Andrea that you see in front of you today is vastly different. Thank you, Tracy McCall Gordon. Thank you. Is vastly different from the one that left the airwaves 6 weeks ago. I have spent the majority of my life ripping and running and doing all that needed to be done for everyone else, my body, because I'd always been exercising. My doctors kept saying, "Yeah, yeah, we see you on, you exercise, you're pumping weights, you're doing all the things." My cortisol levels had grown to such extreme heights that it was just dangerous for my body. My magnesium was down, my potassium was down, but you got to do the blood work, y'all. Let me caution you and say, don't just go and take magnesium or potassium or whatever it else that people tell you to do online. Do the blood work and then let them tell you what you need to do. My husband, you all know. I can't even say enough the sacrifices that my husband made, continues to make in our home and for me and for the both of us. So, honey, if you're listening, thank you. Janelle, thank you. I know you're going home today. We're both crying. My husband and I are crying like she's going home and she's leaving us. Janelle has been a godsend. She moved in here 6 weeks ago. She's been doing all the things. I woke up this morning and my fruit was chopped up for me to have with my meals today. There are certain kinds of fruits I can eat. But I also want to give a huge shout out to Dr. Archima Major. I'm not the person that's going to go through a program and not give credit where credit is due, right? Not act like I just lost the weight because I was so cute and I was doing all the right things. That woman has literally saved my life twice. Right. First, when I was diagnosed with diabetes in 2019, she kept my blood sugars down. My doctor, Dr. Madeline was like, yo, you, and all of this, you managed to keep, yes, yes, yes. Dr. Archima. And she pulled in again and said, I needed to try this thing. It's absolutely going to work for you. It's called Thinner. There's no GLP involved, no injections, no medication, none of that stuff. And it was literally the way we ate and how long we ate and all of that. It was just great, great stuff. And so I would recommend it for anybody. But you've seen this over and over again online. And we just kept thinking, well, when we eat the right foods, when we eat the right foods in the right amounts, it makes a difference. There's no trick to this. And my sister and I, April, I have to thank my sister April, who joined me in this process because I was looking crazy. And she was like, I'm going to join it with you. And she lost 27 pounds to my 26, right? So we really worked hard, her and I together, and we're going to continue to drop the weight because we need to. The more weight we drop, hypertension and diabetes runs in our family. And so we knew this was a situation, that it was going to be a situation. I was diagnosed at 20. My sister Karen said she was diagnosed at 27. One of my sons was diagnosed at 21. So when you know this stuff is in your family history, don't sit around and wait for it to, do what it does. Just take care of yourselves. David Anthony Miller is another person. I did a supermarket tour with him years ago, and all the parts of this program and what we can eat and how we can eat is what that from Damn Good Bodies, that David Anthony Miller is what he had told us years ago. So had we been following his protocol years ago, I would have been much healthier today. So all of these things, we have to give credit where credit is due and not pretend like we're just doing this thing off of the muscle and we're okay and all is well. Alexandra says, nope. Dr. Major says eating clean, working out, supplements were hiding what was happening to me. A stroke was waiting. She eliminated the foods that were doing damage along with the medication. She did. She's amazing. Good morning, Carlene. She absolutely, absolutely did. And every week I was going to the cardiologist every couple of weeks. And every time he saw me, it looked like, you dropping weight? Yep. I am literally, my blood pressure just slowly started coming down. Yep. So, Monica says to witness this blessing is a miraculous. Thank you, Lord. It is, because I could have died. I would have died, and none of you would have been the wiser. You probably would have thought I did something crazy, or it was the diabetes, or it was a nope. I had to get myself together. I don't see. My sister and I did a thing yesterday. I'm looking for David. Good morning, Kay. I hope he's not sleeping. That would be funny. That would be funny. But there's some things that I want to cover. So go call Dr. Archima Major. She has a new business called Nourish RX, where because she was in her business, she's an eye doctor. And she would look in our eyes and would see that we had, we were one step away from a stroke, one step away from a heart attack. She could look in our eyes and tell us all these things. And we just thought, but she would call the doctors and they wouldn't run the test, or people will come and she had a 20-something-year-old that ended up with a stroke, like all these things. And so I am grateful that I have a cocktail of doctors that are listening and not allowing these things to take place, for us to just keep taking medication. So it's just amazing. Marguerite says, eating the right combination of foods at the right times of day shows discipline, and it is necessary for excellent health. Absolutely. Let my baby. Good morning, my darling.
Good morning.
Hi, sweetie pie.
Welcome to the world.
I know. I don't know. You guys are making me tear up this morning. So nice to see your face.
It's so good to see you as well. We have been on a journey. I said that now I know the president of the United States didn't take this girl out of here. Did they send a spider?
Listen, it was so stressful, David. It was so incredibly stressful.
Well, that type of medical news is never a joke. It hits us, and you're so busy moving around. We've always said that the body will stop you when the mind will not.
Yes.
And so we have learned our lesson.
We have.
Okay.
And so we are here. For those of you who have never joined us before, this is David Alexander Jenkins, extraordinaire, who comes on each Monday morning and we talk about world news, local news, national news. I want to, because thank you, David Lipscomb, because I wanted to address he sent me so many things that I could read. This is around the housing. As I did this as I was driving back home yesterday. Let's see. Rental battle lines, frustration over Philly renters protection leads to brokered amendments. This is written by Philly Trib. In a March 4th Philadelphia City Council hearing became a tempest as landlords clashed with renters' advocates over legislation that would give tenants more avenues for grievances over living conditions, including the ability to sue for rent relief. Renters wanted protection for reporting negligence and restitution for enduring units that failed inspections and never received repairs. Landlords said inspections took too long and didn't want their good faith efforts wasted by government inefficiency. Property owners were infuriated by the Committee on Housing's decision to vote before hearing public comments. After the shouting ended and the council chambers emptied, the work began. The minority whip, Nicholas O'Rourke, submitted 14 amendments for his two renters' protection bills, Thursday, supported by input from groups representing landlords and renters. The changes provided more time for landlords to rectify complaints, limit outside organizers attempting to unionize tenants, while also giving tenants more protections against retaliation. So, if I'm hearing this correctly, they're putting a bill into council that says that renters have more protections, that if the landlords don't fix the apartments, and I mean, I've had the experience with a slum landlord who wouldn't fix anything, so I understand what that means. What is the point? What is the part that the landlords are fussing about? That the renters are going to be able to sue to for rent protection, that the renters are going to be able to not only not pay rent but
Yeah.
leave them, their places damaged. What's the issue?
As it stands now, let's say that you are a renter and you're in a place where, I don't know, the ceiling's falling in. And you would to let the landlord know the ceiling was falling in. The landlord didn't do anything about that. And let's say that that leads to mold as an issue. Your recourse currently is to do very little. It's to notify L&I. L&I would come out and note that something was wrong. They may hold that in a record, and you could check back up to see if anything was done later. And that can be used as a record in court should you be sued for eviction,
Mhm.
right? So you got to go all the way to this line called eviction. And that's a really ugly place because once you have been sued for eviction, whether you win your case or not, that eviction is on your record, which means that when you
Mhm.
go to get another apartment, you now have an eviction on your record. 1 in 5 renters in Philadelphia has an eviction on their record.
One in
And
five.
so 1 in 5 renters in Philadelphia has an eviction on their record, right? So when we talk about the price of housing currently, about people being out of the market, not able to afford getting a home of their own due to credit issues. Do you know the average Philadelphian has a credit rating below 600, right? That average Philadelphian does not have the money to make a down payment on a mortgage, that a average Philadelphian is unable to sustain the prices of housing currently. So when we add all those things together, what do they end up becoming? Renters. And so we've switched from being an owning city into being a very heavily rented city. And because of that, the people who are landlords and people who are building owners have had these sort of lackadaisical ways around the law. They could just let you sort of stew. And when you went and complained, one of the reasons why they could get rid of you in the
Retaliation.
Aha. And so this bill seeks to say you cannot retaliate against those people who are renters because they came together, because they coalesced legally to speak to their other neighbors, because they went to the courts before a process of eviction. Right? We shouldn't be dealing with this in eviction courts. We should be dealing with this way ahead of time. So this bill would seek to make sure that some office within the government would be able to come out actually assess. I dealt with this in my own apartment where the landlord was responsible for bringing in the person who's going to test the mold. And I recorded the person with my cell phone because I thought it was so strange that they used the very same Q-tip to test all 6 spots in my apartment and then put the Q-tip into a little jar and said, well, we're going to tell you about the different spots of mold. Well, there are different types of mold. There are different spots that you're testing. How can you test it with one toothpick?
Right.
Right? I mean, one Q-tip.
Mhm.
So it was clear to me that this person had been handpicked and chosen by the people who were going to then, I was going to have to litigate against about the issues within the apartment I was living in. So when we talk about the fairness in this, it's not very fair for the renter. Now, I spoke to yesterday a landlord and an owner who said, but this is going to kill the small businesses. Because what I said to many landlords was, you guys should have insurance on your apartments, right? So when you take the first month's, last month's deposit, those 3 months of payments, what you're supposed to be doing with those 3 months of payments is guaranteeing the apartment with insurance, so that there should be any issues where the renters decide to escrow rent or not pay, or you're in a process of eviction because someone is there who's not leaving, that you're
Mhm.
being paid by the insurance company for every single month that the tenant is not paying until you are in court and litigating in court. The idea that you should be paid for things you haven't done while you're in court is hilarious, right? You're in court for a reason. If you've sued a person, you're in court, that process of court time stops. That's the ball that we have. That's the fairness we have in our
Mhm.
judicial system. But
Okay.
this insurance would help that on the front end. Second of all, if you're keeping places which are not habitable, you have an L&I strike, that is not the tenant's fault. That is your fault. And to say that the tenant is a problem because they've raised issues of rodents or pests or this, that, and the
Mhm.
other is really a problem. The last thing I would say to you is that many of these issues are currently not legislated. So what it means to be habitable means structurally, right, in many ways. So when L&I
Mhm.
comes out, they want to know that the ceiling doesn't have a hole, that there isn't water pouring through actively somewhere, but they don't ask you about mold. They don't ask you about when's the last time you saw a rat, unless they saw it, right? So
Mhm.
these are things where L and I and the government need to come together. I'd say independent sourcing is important when it comes to testing. That's one of the things I think is really important. There should be an independent person who does not work for landlords and does not work for tenants, but works for the government, who's
Mhm.
going to assess where these things are. So that's something that might be an amendment that we see as well.
So David Lipscomb is a landlord. He says, let me first say that small landlords want people to have safe and healthy homes. Then he says small landlords, banks check applicants for risks, but they take that right away from small landlords. I'm not sure what that means.
What
And
they're
he's
saying is, yeah, they're going to take away some of your ability to go back so far. Again, 1 in 5 people in Philadelphia holding an eviction record, whether they won the record or not. So you go
right.
to court, you win, it's still in your record. And so they're saying it's unfair, right? You'd have to go through a process of sealing that. Well, that's a governmental process. That's a court process where the judgment would have to be sealed first in the public and then be expunged by the governor. That's
Mhm.
years and years of process. If we're
Right.
talking about 1 out of 5 Philadelphians, how many people will we have on the street to appease the landlord?
Mhm. Right. So the other thing he says, and I've heard this from many of my friends who are landlords, renters don't pay rent and it takes up to 10 months to evict, loss of income. So they're not
That's
getting
the
paid.
insurance policy. So if you were too cheap to get the insurance, this is why
So,
you have
so
this
then my
issue.
question then becomes, because I've never heard of landlords having an insurance policy, which absolutely
Right.
makes sense. Does that insurance policy absolutely exist? I know renters can have their own
Yes.
insurance policies. When I had rented an
Renters
apartment years
cannot.
ago,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
rented, I
You
had an
can.
insurance policy for my rental.
Every renter is supposed to have insurance policy. That insurance policy is for damages to the unit X, Y, and Z. If there was a
Mhm,
flood, how do you move? Like, oh,
mhm,
that's basic renter insurance. But
mhm,
people who own the buildings can also insure each individual apartment. It's about it's about 10 to 20% of the rent for the entire year. But
mhm,
that's your first, last, and security, right?
mhm.
So the
Right.
reason why you're using that to insure the apartment is to pay for things like damages if the
Mhm,
if the person just walks out. It's to pay for the lack of rent that you're going to receive. A lot of people who had this insurance during COVID didn't have the issues of those who did not. Small rental people say, "Well, I really needed this income, and so I'm renting my place out." To which I say, "You are a terribly irresponsible person." Because what would happen if the roof were to fall in on your home? Where would you have drawn that income from? What would happen if there were to be a flood in your basement? Where would you have drawn that income from? What would happen if you had some big disaster, a tree fell down the house? What would you have done about places? If you didn't have the money in the first place to deal with those large issues, the same money you're going to pay when someone that you need to evict is not paying their rent, then you
mhm,
probably don't need to be in the rental business to begin with. It is not a get rich quick scheme. It
mm,
is not even something for people who just have a little bit, because that means that you are not self insured to deal with major emergencies. And so I see the
mhm,
courts push back, particularly judges all the time on landlords like, you didn't have enough money to get through 6 months of rent. What
mhm,
were you going to do in an emergency?
mm. Alexandra says, I was that average Philadelphian, yet I am now a homeowner. I had a landlord who wouldn't fix anything for weeks. And Alexandra, try months. I could tell you some stories. Then do a patch job.
Years.
Yes. Listen, y'all are writing a mile a minute. Then did a patch job. When he did, he got mad because I called Ellen and he called Ellen. Then Marguerite says a limited amount of people don't have personal renters insurance, and a lot of landlords do not have insurance on their property. So how do we fix that?
Years.
So David Lipscomb, the question is, would you insure your property that you're renting so that if these kinds of things happen, people don't pay their rent, etc., then you file a claim. He says they put the cost of the relocation on small landlords. What does that mean? So if the property is in disrepair, and the
Example, Exhibit A, right?
I see it.
This is this is 2 years
Hmm.
of what originally was water damage from outside,
Hmm.
which was raining in the apartment. And eventually, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, probably a little bit longer now, the ceiling began to come in because they never actually repaired the issue of the water damage, right? Now, this is a larger corporation. What they should do is immediately do remediation, take down the ceiling, look at what issues are underneath it, do the mold testing, do the environmental testing, X, Y, and Z. None of that has happened. Right now, and so the recourse I would have would be to complain. Right now, if I
Mhm.
complain, they say to me, you're a complainer. We don't
Yes,
want
and
you
we
to
will
renew
figure
your
out a way to get rid of
lease.
you. I've had that happen,
Right?
yes.
How do we do that? And so
Mhm.
the job of the tenant currently, now the legal job for me is to escrow rent, right, until it's repaired. Now, could you imagine me escrowing rent for 2 years?
That's
Until it's repaired.
crazy.
And then they would move to eviction and say, well, you didn't pay this bill for
Yeah,
2 years because I'm
right,
escrowing rent waiting for you to repair X, Y, and Z.
right,
Now we have pieces of ceiling falling out. Now we have this, that, and the other. And what is the recourse for the rent? What would the renter take a path to do? Now, in
right.
the case of the small business person saying, well, what was the question was about the insurance, about
Yeah, that wait. David says they put the cost of the relocation on small landlords. Renters
yes,
should
it
have
is your
rented.
job.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yes,
let me
that's
tell you
your
why they
job.
do it though, David. Because if you are renting the apartment and it has gone in disrepair, the roof is falling in, the windows don't work, da 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 da, and you have not done anything to repair and make it livable for the tenant, yeah, they're going to make
You
you pay for
have
the
what's called a
relocation cost.
license of habitability. Your
Mm,
license of habitability in your contractual language says that you're providing a space for the year, the 2 years, the 6 months, the month to month, whatever it is, which ensures the inhabitability of the space you're providing to the person. When
mhm,
you rent out your space, you're literally saying to someone else, this is your space for the next period of time, and you
right,
are guaranteeing that the space is habitable. If the
right,
space becomes inhabitable by law, you have to now replace the space.
right,
So you have to go find a place to go put them. You have to put them in an Airbnb or a hotel. In fact, the law is even more restrictive. It says you have to put them in a place which is like or akin to the place they're in. So
mhm,
if you're renting in Rittenhouse Square, you have to find them a unit in Rittenhouse Square. If you're
right,
renting a penthouse, you got to go find them another penthouse or a hotel somewhere. If
right.
you're renting, right? So this is where
So
I
it, so
think
it behooves
sometimes
the landlord. It behooves, excuse me, David. It behooves the landlords then to keep the properties in habitable shape, so that
and
they
to
don't
keep
have
money in
to.
a bank somewhere so that when things happen, there are things that happen that cause landlord.
Mhm,
For instance, I don't think that the landlord in this particular building, who by the way, the landlord switched and sold in the middle of the process, right? Because they realized there was so much going on, they just sold the building.
mm,
I don't think that in this particular case, right, that anybody thought, oh my God, let me pour water into David's apartment, right? So this wasn't a negligence of, well, perhaps it was negligence in doing repairs on the outside of the building, perhaps negligence in doing roofing or whatever it was. But I don't think that often the people who are property owners and or landlords are thinking, what can we do to make a problem for the tenant? But when that problem arises, it is completely their responsibility to fix it. And I think they think that they are looking for some sort of a grace period or some sort of a, oh well, I didn't know the ceiling was going to collapse. Well,
mhm,
this isn't the tenant's issue, right? And so what I've heard a lot of judges say, and what I've heard a lot of people in government say is, so what? So
mm,
grow up, put your big girl panties on. If you did this without the proper money to afford being able to rent out places to people, then you are really walking yourself in a bad situation and you're walking into life on hope, and hope is not assurance. And we
mhm,
don't walk through life on hope. And when you are guaranteeing the living conditions of another person, it is your job to guarantee them.
mhm,
And that sucks, but it's
mhm.
still your job.
There's another side to this where they're just some horrible tenants.
Yes.
Ah, horrible. They
Yes.
don't take care of anything. They tear up the
Hmm.
place. They leave the
Hmm.
walls, indentation on the walls. How
Yes.
can landlords, you know,
Insurance, 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 insurance. It's like putting on foundation for ladies before you put on a gown. It smooths all the rolls. Right. And so I want you to get your girdle before you rent. And
mm,
what it does is this. In fact, for many
mhm,
renters, particularly in New York and other people who are not so great,
mhm,
this is a wonderful thing. They love it when a girl tears up their house
yeah,
because it means that they're going to get paid twice as
that's
much to
it.
go make it
Yeah.
more fancy. And
Mhm,
they're going to have some downtime, but every apartment that they insured for $100,000, when that person left
mhm,
$30,000 of damage, they receive $90,000 on top of it because the
mhm,
insurance is going to pay it, right?
mhm,
And so that's why it's so important to have the insurance. I actually think that all people who are landlords should also be licensed as hoteliers. This insures you. This gives you a protection, a level of governmental protection around everything else. It
mhm,
also means that when you go through issues like a COVID or a shutdown
mhm,
or a financial crisis in the market, that you are insured as a hotelier, and
mhm,
therefore you're getting that government funding as a hotelier to continue forward.
mhm.
So I think, much like I believe Uber drivers should have to
So,
have a limo license,
yeah.
that renters should have to have a hotelier's license.
So, in other words, you can't just put up a shingle and say, I'm renting my spot. You have to literally, yeah, got it. Okay, got it. David says there have always been bad landlords. However, there are many more great landlords. So then you band together as great landlords to figure out how to deal with the ones that aren't so great, because there are a lot of them
Well,
that aren't so great.
let me tell you this. A great landlord doesn't have a problem with this law because they're not keeping a terrible place in the first place. This law only affects you when you have an inhabitable place. You don't have this issue otherwise. So this worry that good landlords have is for naught. If you've done your job, then if you have a person just simply not paying the rent,
Mhm,
then they
mhm,
will go through the court process. Why is the court process long? Because you're in a contract. A contractual language
mhm,
requires
mhm,
several steps in the court process. That's never going to get
mhm,
shorter because we're in
mhm,
Pennsylvania. That's actually not the city governance
mhm,
guiding that. That is Pennsylvania government guiding the process of a landlord tenant case, which is a contractual case. So you've got to first go through the abatement process. So there's a tenant and landlord what is it called? Eviction diversion program. That's
mhm,
what it is. In Philadelphia, the eviction diversion program that you must go through. That's a 2.5 month process. Once you go that, you go through the court process. The court process discovery. What happens in
mhm,
discovery is the tenant gets to say, here's all the things that are wrong. The landlord can say, here's all the things that are wrong. And some judges want there to be a mandatory arbitration below $5,000. It costs you more to sue than it does to have an arbitration. Again, your contract is still legal. So it's not that you'll never see X, Y, and Z. But again, if you think that this is a process, owning a property and then renting it out, which means you're going to always be paid on time, you're always just getting either, you're going to have your money, and you can bet your life off of this rental. I have another thing for you coming in. I'm telling you, you're very irresponsible about the way you're handling things because that is not how business works. No business. And so to
mhm,
believe that this is different is just like believing you're going to buy a house to
mhm.
flip, and when it doesn't flip next month, you're upset and your arms up in the air and you say, I can't eat today because I spent all my money on a house to flip. Uh,
Hold on one second, because David Lipscomb said if the landlord submits insurance claim, then their hold on, y'all, man, you all are talking. Then their rates are increased. Renter insurance is required, but the renter's insurance is for. Is it
it's
okay?
a different thing. Renter's
It is a
insurance
different thing.
is,
It's apples and
yes.
oranges, David.
Yeah.
And so remember, when you're renting a property, anything can happen, right? You can have a flood. You can have the ceiling caving. That's the risk that you take when you rent a property, when you own a property. So rates are increased, okay, but at least you are able to fix the property when you have the insurance. So what I'm asking is, are we really ready to rent these properties if we can't
No,
pay for the insurance to cover these things, because these things are
I'm
going to
hearing,
happen.
I'm
Anybody
hearing I
that
can't afford to be a renter. That's what I'm
Anybody that
hearing.
yeah, anybody that lives in a home consistently sees that things go wrong. Our heater broke, pipe burst. Like all these things happen. You don't rent a place thinking that it's always going to be in perfect condition, and you don't just continue to accept rent without putting some money aside to say this could happen, that could happen, right? Philadelphia is an example. There are possums and mice and all the other things. You could have somebody living next door to you that don't take care of their property, and there are roaches everywhere, right? So your property gets right. It's just a lot. Renters insurance covers relocation. Okay, so what are you asking, David? That the renters insurance, the renters
No, no,
should
no, no. Renter's insurance is for the renter. Your insurance that you're getting is for you.
right.
So the renter insurance that the renter has to carry. Let's say there's a fire in the building and everything is destroyed, and your insurance doesn't cover more than X, Y, and Z. Now, then the renter's insurance kicks in to be able to pay for the other things that your insurance will not. Because again, your insurance should say there's a limited liability, there's a tort, this and the other. And that keeps the person, the renter, from suing you when they've lost their things in the fire, right? That's why they have renter's insurance. Um, renter's insurance is not meant to relocate them when you have a fault.
Right.
Right. It's
Right.
it's 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 again, that's the insurance that they pay for them. It's like having your own lawyer. This is why they're on your team for you. Your insurance, the people that you should be getting to insure you are the people that are going to insure the place no matter what happens to it. So if suddenly a renter stops paying payment, they put it into escrow. You can put in a claim that says that the renters put their payment into escrow, they're not paying me. It's now the second, I think you have to go through 1 month. So you have to get to the second month of non-payment, and then all of a sudden they'll start kicking in. The insurance will pay you all the way up until the time of the court
Mm-hmm.
because the insurance wants to know whether you were liable or not. So this
Mhm.
idea that you can be liable and be paid is what is so fantastically hilarious to people in government as they create these
Mhm.
laws. It's why they
Mhm.
laugh in the room when people are like, "Well, but this is unfair." Well, wait a minute. Why is it that someone is supposed to live in conditions that are unsolvable?
And here's the other thing, David. There has been a culture of treating renters as if they're below basic people. So
Second
if
class
you rent,
citizens.
we can at will not renew your lease if you complain that your roof is leaking. We can, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to put you out so you have nowhere to live. I
I don't
think
want to
that's
deal with
part of.
problematic people.
Yeah,
Right.
right. But if you rent a property, you have to be able to keep that property in good condition. You're asking people to pay you rent in good faith that the property is in excellent condition. I had rented in a space. This guy was such a slumlord and literally worth millions of dollars. Would not fix, and it wasn't just the apartment building that I was in. It was somewhere else where he had like 90 apartments. It was crazy. Would not pay, and was sitting on council in the community. Crazy. But they when I said I'm not paying rent because these windows are leaking air and we could not, in the wintertime, oh my God, we were just bleeding, electricity. He said, then I'm not renewing. I said, try it. Of
Hmm.
course, he wasn't able to do it. But there are a lot
Hmm.
of people who can't go, that just can't happen. It just
Who
won't
are not
happen.
brave enough to go and who are more scared about not having a place to live than they are about
Yes,
living with them and the
absolutely.
moat. Right.
Absolutely. So I need
Yeah.
to read some of these comments because, baby, there's a
Hmm.
lot of them here.
Yes.
Alexandra says both should have it. The renter and the owner. During a snowstorm, I had water coming in, and the landlord did not come out until I gave them the message from the insurance agent. They will pay my claim and sue them to get it back. That person destroyed their house. Viola was talking about another person who destroyed somebody's house. Sharon says, when I lived in Delco, I was in an apartment where the roof leaked for 2 months. I was on the top floor. I documented with photos and conversations. Every time I called, I sent pics, docs to Delaware County and the landlord. It's crazy out here. There's a couple of, hold on. Ooh, David says renters insurance covers relocation, but why would they have to pay for the relocation if the fault is of the person that is renting the
I don't
apartment?
think he's understanding that the renter's insurance will relocate you and then sue him.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that's not connecting. Once they have paid to put you in, by the way, the Ritz Carlton, because it's based upon whatever you're paying. They're going to pay you out the entire amount, right? Once they've done that, they're going to sue you, the landlord,
To
in
recoup their
court,
money.
and
Yes.
they will win.
Whoo-wee. So Monica says, I'm trying to keep quiet because I am in property management of a multi-million dollar company. Once you've made enough noise and they don't want to fix it fully, not just a patch job, you are non-renewed. Multi-million dollars. So it's not just the small landlord, it's the
Oh, and
largest
this
one.
is, and I want Philadelphia to hear this. This is actually an issue of the bigger landlords. It's not so much an issue of the smaller landlords. Smaller landlords get things through court much quicker than the bigger landlords, right? And the issue that we're actually seeing is big corporations. One, remember the bill that just went through. You need to have a contact in the city, right?
Mhm.
In order for you to rent out in the city. This idea that you can be from Kalamazoo or North Carolina
Yeah.
or New York and be renting out a building and no one can call you and no one can get to you is a big issue in Philadelphia. So one of the first bills that was passed was dealing with that. This
Mhm.
second set of bills addresses things about that unfairness, right? So as a person who's working in an office, she's saying, no, actually, there isn't a reason for non-renewal.
Right.
I would ask anyone, and this is something for you to write down, when a person sends you a letter saying non-renewal, I want you to tell them that you are interested in a bill of particulars.
Mhm.
You'd like to know all of the reasons why they are not renewing your lease. And
Yes.
you want to be able to have that as a bill of particulars, just in case it comes up, because you want to be able to take recourse for, oh, was I a bad tenant? Oh, did I
Right.
burn
Was I
something
not
down?
paying
Was
my
I a
mortgage, right, my rent
disturbance?
on time?
Was I
Exactly.
not?
Yes.
Was it not paid on
Yes.
time for this reason, or was it for that reason? Did you
Yeah.
have? You can get online, everyone, and you can see how many violations the person that you're renting from
From.
has against you. Right? You can see. You know that you don't pay rent if a person is has unsuitable habitability. These are the things
Mhm.
that I think a lot of people are like, oh my god, I can't believe that this is real. Well, you cannot rent out such spaces.
Let me ask you this. if is there a place for people to speak online about the places that are horrible, the buildings and the
Currently, this is what this bill is trying to protect. Because when people coalesce together legally to have conversations about the nature of their places, they are
Mhm.
retired against. The entire conversation comes down, and everybody who's in the conversation suddenly is in a non renewal.
Uh-huh. So Essence made a point. She says we need to stop telling people to rent places to make extra income. It's just not that simple. Marguerite says real deal. Many landlords cannot afford to rent properties out. All of this. I'm reading this. Tiffany says my son has renter's insurance. I always thought it was for him to be able to replace his personal goods in case. That's it. It's just for his
That it is.
personal goods, right?
It is.
Uh, Laura says the insurance company will pay the claim and go after the landlord and sue for reimbursement. So really, let me see what else is happening here.
Yeah,
Uh,
so many people got into this thinking they were going to make some money. I'm going to
yeah,
rent out my duplex and I'm just going to make some money. Baby, you're not going to see a dime
mhm,
for the first 2 years. And
yeah,
when you do see a dime, if you're responsible, you're supposed to put that dime into making sure that when things go wrong in the building, you're okay. Year 4 is when you might start making money.
mhm,
But for if you can't afford that in the
yeah,
first place, you need not to be in that situation. The
yeah,
only people who tend to make money really quickly are the people who live in the houses that they're renting out, right? So they're
yeah,
the people who have the apartment on the bottom floor and rent out the top two because they can afford to keep the building going because they live in it.
yes, yeah. Monica says people need to be brave enough and smart enough to band together. Whoo. Marguerite says a lot of people are not brave enough to make noise because they fear reprisal, which is why I think this bill is trying to go through to give the tenants some protection. Tracy says if the home is inhabitable, it covers property damage and personal liability for bodily injury. Ooh, David says the tenant was responsible for the fire and we weren't. So, but if the tenant is responsible, yes. But this is what we're talking about here, David, are the irresponsibility of many landlords who really put people out of their apartments, have them living in untenable conditions. What do we do about that?
Well, and I want
Margaret.
to I want to clarify his claim. No, if the tenant is responsible for the fire, their insurance company, when you make that claim and fight it back, will say we deny paying out their claim on their personal effects. You are still responsible with your insurance company for the building. I don't
Mhm,
think people understand this, right? Like, let me
mhm,
be clear. You are responsible no matter what happens to the building for
mhm,
its structural habitability for all the tenants within,
mhm.
right? If a fire started because a kid threw a cracker through the window, you're still
Right.
responsible. If a fire
Mhm,
is started because somebody lit up a cigarette and burned the whole thing down, you're responsible for
mhm.
everybody in that building.
So the bottom line is ownership comes with a set of responsibilities, and if you're not ready to be responsible, then don't own. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And so now you have
Okay.
all these people who've gotten into this industry who are going, "Oh my God, but I can't sustain this if
Mhm,
it's cooked in such a way." Yes. No, you cannot sustain this. No,
mhm.
you probably shouldn't be renters. And they said, well, what happens to all of the units that are on the market right now that are not up to snuff? They shouldn't be on the market right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Monica says legally they do not have to tell you why they're the reasons for non-renewal. So then legally there needs to be some things put into place. And
This is
Alexandra says,
why the article of a bill of particulars is important. I want you guys to take this language and be very serious about a bill of particulars. This requires them to state for the purposes of law what the reason is for their non-renewal.
mhm,
And if their reason doesn't hold up, should you decide to sue them? Because when you ask them for a bill of particulars, they get really quick, they get careful.
mhm,
If you decide to sue them, the bill of particulars can be used in court, and then you can ask for a
mhm.
second bill of particulars in a process called discovery. And in that process of discovery, that goes to the court. And if anything about that bill of particulars is found to be false,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So as for the bill of particulars, I got it. This is great. I am
If you're ever in a
loving this
situation in
conversation.
court, by the way,
Mhm,
and you have to make judgments by default, so before you see a judge, you're going to come to an agreement, and that'll be a judgment.
mhm,
You can ask for the language. I want to be sure about the language. It is without prejudice.
Without
So
prejudice.
you want to be sure that all of your things are without prejudice. That means that they cannot come back at the end of the day and say that they're going to use this
Mhm,
case against you as to why you can't be renewed.
mhm,
Without prejudice is a huge clause because when they give you a non-renewal after you've had this thing in court and you have won your thing in court, then you take the non-renewal and you sue them for the cost of the building.
mhm, mhm, mhm. So let me finish reading these things. Whew. David says this is one of the most tenant friendly cities. Landlords have the right for non renewal. Okay. Alexandra, so Monica says legally they don't have to tell you the reasons for non renewal. Alexandra says Monica is correct. I wasn't renewed in Delco after complaining about roof leaking, homeless sleeping in the hallway, bed bugs, roast infestation, and the building is still having the issues 9 years later.
So Delco is different from Philadelphia, and I want us to remember the city municipal line, and this is why this is an argument in city council. Because city council several years ago reset conditions of habitability and living. In Philadelphia, we do have things that are reasons for non-renewal and renewal that you can fight back. Do have an eviction diversion program. We do have the ability for you to write in. Now, let's say that you had no court process. There was no documented complaint. There was no this, any other, and you just got a non-renewal release. It is very hard to say that that non-renewal is for any other reason other than I just simply don't want to renew this apartment.
Mhm,
But if you ask for a bill of particulars, they tell you non-renewal is because we're going to do renovations on the apartment, and then 6 months later they don't do any renovations. Or you ask
mhm,
for a bill of particulars, and they say the non-renewal is because they're not renting out this apartment anymore. They're going to move in, and then you discover it's been put up for lease again. If the non-renewal is for X, Y, and Z, then you can sue in civil court for what is then effectively discrimination. So it's a recourse about that. And most landlords realize that you're setting them up for a play to fail, and they don't do that. So they'll give you a real reason. This is too much for me. I don't want to rent out to anybody anymore.
right, right. Um, David says, why would she want to live in a building like that? Because David, when she moved in, the building was not like that, and so the issues kept happening. It's not so easy to come up with first, last, and 1 month security. We put a lot of ownership on the tenants when the landlords have a responsibility in all of this.
Well, let me tell you again, one of the reasons why this takes so long, because he said, well, it takes so long in court, is because what happens in that process is once you have filed the eviction as the landlord and you're now in this eviction process in court, it's on your record. So even if you win the eviction, you get all of these stays because the person has the right to find new inhabitability before you put them out. So they go before the judge and they say, I've been trying to find a place, I'm looking for a place, can't find one because on my record is an eviction because this and the other. And even if they win, on their record is an eviction. So a lot of people don't want to go through this process because they fear having that E on their record, which means they can no longer find anywhere to live. And if
Wow.
they can't afford to buy a home, they certainly don't want to leave the one with the mice.
David also says, why does a landlord have to provide a reason for non-renewal? The tenant could just be a pain in the butt.
You'd have to say the tenant is a pain in the butt. And the court says, well, wait a minute. You don't get to decide what pain in the butt means, right? Are they legally a problem or you just don't like them?
Right.
Right? Like did they do something? So you can say this person is disruptive. This person smokes in the building. This is why you're
Person is
supposed to
too
document,
loud after hours, etc., etc.
document every
Yeah,
violation, this, that, and the other, right? This protects you. But I put them out because I had green hair and I found it a nuisance. I'm so sorry. That's not legal.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry. That's going to get you into a court process later on.
So there's a complaint that this is a tenant-friendly city, but there was never a place for tenants to fully complain about what's been happening to them. You know?
And I would say it's
Uh,
not tenant friendly. It is tenant heavy on the court side
yeah.
because we found so you have to understand where we are in Philadelphia. We have a city which has an increase of homeless population,
Right.
which is exponential, of people who have full-time jobs, who are lower middle class people who are finding themselves without a place to live. We have
Mhm.
new buildings being built over the city whose rents are exponential. One of the things that is causing this problem is rental increase. What renters now do to get tenants out who they have no legal recourse for is they just raise the rent. So they say to the person, your rent's going to go to market rate or above it. There's no cap in Pennsylvania for how much you can raise your rent. Selling your rent next year could be $8,000 from your $2,000 this year. That's perfectly legal. And then the tenant has to move because they can't afford it. Now you have this look, but is that something we should be doing? Should we Are we a city that says there should be no rental cap? We have moved from a space of renters being people who help make money as a capitalistic system for those who want to rent out their places to a city that says housing is a right.
Mhm.
And so I think that this is part of the conversation we're having as a whole. And quite frankly, the people who are landlords are most of the arguments being presented boil down to I can't afford to be a landlord.
David says too much paperwork for a small landlord. So, David, if your
Okay,
family
get
has
out of the
been renting
business.
for, if your family has been renting it according to you since 1968 and all your buildings are up to code, that's you. So, what you need to do now as they're going through this process is fill out the paperwork so that you stay up to code. Make sure that the people are
I
being,
am scared by too much paperwork. The idea that there's too much paperwork for you to be providing housing for somebody is problematic for me.
yeah, yeah. Erica says this conversation has been excellent. I've learned so much. This is why we're on here. This is part of the reason why we do what we do, because you hear both sides of the argument. I understand for the landlords that are doing what they're supposed to do, keeping things up to code. Their buildings are fine. But if you're not a problematic landlord, then none of this
Just
stuff
this
should really be
intention.
an issue for you. Uh, so David says now they want to control when the government has caused the rents to increase. No, they want to rent control, but that had to happen in New York. Do you know? I have a child making high six figures in New York that is just having to share an apartment. The rents are out of control. There has to be a way. This should not just be a way to make money, 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 money all over the place, and the people aren't getting what they need. It is a conversation to be had on both sides. I can hear what's happening here, but as someone who has been a renter in my lifetime, I see what's going on here for a lot of people. Marguerite says landlords must also document everything also and make tenants aware of problems. People are often pains in the butt because they're treated unjustly and things just aren't being fixed. How much time should a landlord have when a complaint is made for something to be fixed? Something like that. Do you understand
So
what
the
I'm saying?
landlord, so this is the thing, right? And this is that people's always going to, landlords can notify the court of non-payment after the second payment is missed. So first you have to give a note to the person, say X, Y, and Z. Then you have to give them this warning. Once you put the second notification in, by the time the third month comes up, you're in what's called eviction diversion program. It's not that long. It's a 90-day process. By the way, you collected first, last, and securities. You missed no payment. Okay.
Well, what's
That's
happening to the first, last, and security? Because
well,
that's what
and that's what I want to know. What did you do, scat, 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 with the first, last, and security? Help me.
because
You know,
that's
they
supposed
collected
to
all
take
this
up
money,
there in
and
an account so that should these kinds of things happen, yeah, hmm,
where did it go?
yeah,
Prima facie says that in this document before me, in the four corners of this document that the judge has to decide upon, are the conversations about what does the contract provide? Stable housing. Okay. It provides X, Y, it provides a recourse. Okay, this and the other. If you come before the court outside of the parameters of what is before the four corners of the law, you're gonna lose. What did you do with all the money?
yeah,
Why did you not provide habitable housing?
yeah.
So you can't just decide what I want the person out. So I'm going to just evict them. I'm just going to go to court and say goodbye. No, 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 no. You have a contract in play. Contract law sits within the law.
Hmm, hmm. And
Prima
Alexandria,
facie.
yeah. Monica says David is totally correct. My company is not in Philly. Also, a huge issue is that most tenants do not read their initial leases. Some of these addendums are crazy and cover the landlord, not the tenant.
And in
And so,
Philadelphia, you cannot write a lease that is not in compliance with the Philadelphia law. So you can put all the my company who's in New York. It's funny I had this sitting here on my desk because I knew we were going to have this conversation.
that's your lease? Holy commotion.
Okay, now most of this is bullshit because we live in Philadelphia, which has laws that say you can't. Actually, that's not so. So you can sign whatever you want. You can sign your firstborn child away. When you go before the court, they say the law of the municipality First, the law, then of the state, then the law that is federal has to be followed. And the municipality's law has to be in line with the state's law has to be in line with the federal government's law. And so currently, the municipality that I live in, Philadelphia County,
Right.
says, no, I'm sorry, so much of this is not the problem of the renter. It is the problem of the person who is renting to them. It is the problem of the landlord. So, yeah, now if I lived in Delco, I'd be in a world of trouble and a world of hurt because there's a lot of lines in here that don't protect me, they protect the landlord.
Yeah. Hold on. Alexandra says that now New York City residents are moving here for affordable rent and commute to work in New York City. Absolutely. That is
Mhm.
happening quite a bit. David Liscombe, he says 60% of renters in Philadelphia have a safe and healthy home, so we really don't need all this legislation. But what about
60%,
the wait,
40.
even if it was 60%, what about the other 40%, David? Are they not allowed to have a safe place to live?
David, you're
Right?
losing the argument this morning. It's not working. It's because what you're saying is that 40% of the people can be on their behind, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
It's
That's a
nearly
lot
half.
of people. You all need a homeowners association, a landlord association to hold the ones who are not. That's 40% of people. That's a lot of people.
One in five Philadelphians who is a renter has an eviction on their record. Most of those, over half of those evictions, are ones which the renters won. They won their cause. It's still on their record.
Wow.
In
Well,
a
Simone, I see you all here, and my
in
phone
a
is buzzing.
similar shift, we have a budget that was just passed, right? $7 billion. Um, that continues to put money into sort of homelessness because we talk about bad renters, people, this and the other. When a person is in distress, what they do is figure out a way to go forward, not always legally, not always wonderfully. And a lot of the people who you find who sit in spaces and don't go are people who have no place to go. So I've always said, give them a place to go and they will go. So I always think landlords would be greatly helped if, for instance, we had places for people who were unhoused to go. Now, it costs us today 70 or $87,000 per year per person in Philadelphia to solve the needs of a homeless person. That is beds, that is hospital visits, that is policing, that is food, that is all this sort of intake, all that
Mhm,
kind of problem around
mhm,
$87,000 per person. If we housed first, if we just took homeless people and said, here is an efficiency in a building, perhaps adjacent to a hospital, an empty building that we have, these empty hotels like we did during COVID, it would cost us $23,000 per year. There's a 60 or there's a 60 some thousand dollar savings in housing people instead of trying to remedy it once they're already homeless. Now, this idea of eliminating street homeless things is magnificent. I love the idea that we would eliminate street homeless. We could eliminate all homelessness by simply housing them and save a lot of money and put it back into the budget. But we have a moral problem in Philadelphia and in most of the parts of the country. Our issue is not actually the numbers. Economics say it works. We talk to the hospital system, they say it works. We talk to police, they're like, thank God, we love this. The problem is that we've been taught that it is better to teach a man how to fish than to give him the fish. And I want to say to everybody who hops up and down in city council and quotes from the Bible and preaches first and prays and X, Y, and Z that Jesus Christ is antithetical to the Chinese proverb that says teach a man how to fish. What Jesus says is feed my people and tend my flock. He doesn't say teach them how to fish first. He doesn't say teach them how to make bread. He says bread falls from heaven, right? And from that, this is my body which I give to you, do this in remembrance of me. There is this idea of gifting. Why? Well, if we were to take this idea of spending $23,000 per person to house a person, what we know is the first road to recovery for mental health and for health period is a good night's rest and a meal. If we were to begin people in safe spaces, they would suddenly come out of fight and flight mode. And now they would be in a restful state where they would start to build. Do you know how many people want to exist in a very small one room where their toilet is in the same room as they have to sleep? Very few. And so people will begin to naturally, as they have a safe space, begin to do day work, begin to put themselves together. They'll have an address, places to receive mail. Now they can apply for other sorts of things and they can build themselves up to become stable. But we are working backwards and paying for it. So I need tax people in Philadelphia to get on the back of people who make these decisions and say, oh, no, 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 no. We have all these empty buildings, 5,000 some odd empty units in Philadelphia sitting in the land bank. We have 5,000 some odd homeless people on the streets. There's a discrepancy. Why are we putting people? Now, the renters and the landlords can get behind this together. Landlords, this is going to help you out. Why? Because these people who are squatting are not
Mhm.
going to squat when they have an efficiency to go to.
Yeah. Janelle says we probably need legislation that protects homeowners concerning the damage the rental neglect does to adjacent properties. Different issue altogether.
Different,
Yeah,
and also you can't legislate it. That's
yeah.
an insurance issue. So you can't make a law that says that your neighbor is can, that you can already sue right now. Let's say that
Mhm,
construction's going on next door to you, right? You
mhm,
can sue the person who owns the house. That
mhm,
exists currently. And you'll often win that suit if you can prove that the problems in your home are directly caused by the problems of your neighbor's house. You can win that. uh, Suing a tenant for the building issue is something that won't happen because the tenant doesn't own the building.
mhm, mhm. Andrea says Jesus didn't give the multitude a fishing rod and how to class. He handed out fish sandwiches and a lesson on goodness. And a lot of people don't have goodness. So,
People don't
so
understand that.
yeah, yeah. Kay says renters should also research, check out the place they're looking to move into, the same as the landlord do a background check on the potential tenant. So there needs to be two places. One where, if someone is, because there's some folks who get over. Let's be clear. There are folks who move into places and will not pay their rent, and they just try to get over, and they make life miserable for landlords, and they don't pay their rent for months on end, et cetera, which then costs the landlords way past the first, last, and last month, whatever, security. But there also needs to be a place where we can put in where where they're horrible landlords, right? Do not rent here, because what happens if people realize that there's certain spaces that are just difficult to live in, then the landlords will be forced to make sure that their places are livable for people to move into. But that won't happen because people are just moving in. They're like, okay, they'll let me come in. My credit score, that's the other thing. My credit score might not be the best. And so they are giving me a space to come in. I can barely afford to pay the rent. So how do we negotiate and navigate these spaces that people are in? It's not all or nothing on either side.
One of the things that we have in Philadelphia is a lack of the bottom rung. So it used to be that we had places like the YMCA and many other places where you could rent a room and stay in the room until you didn't pay it anymore for $30 or $40 or $20 or whatever
Right.
it was, right? We got rid of all of those places. And so you have an entire group of people who were working people. These are people who were working factories. They were maids, they were service level people who were living in these spaces, people who came into town and were working on things for a few months. That's gone. So a lot of the issue that we see in housing and lower end housing, not people being unhoused, is due to not having this lower end that people can afford to pay. Right now, when you ask someone to show up with first class and security, and then you ask someone to pay this rent of $1,500 and up to live somewhere, you're suggesting to them that they have a job, right? That's three times that rental income. Well, let's just do the math, right?
Mhm.
We're talking about someone who's at least making $50,000 a year. Well, the poverty line in Philadelphia is $15,212. That's something like $290 a week.
Yeah.
Where does the person who exists in a 40-hour a week minimum wage job live?
And do they not have right to shelter over their heads?
We don't think they do because we won't pay them. We also won't supply them shelter. And when they do something caused by, again, if you suffer your people to be ill-educated, then you corrupt their manners from infancy, and then you charge them for the crimes which their first education disposes on them, then you have created the thief only to punish it, says our
Yeah.
Lord in England. And if we create
Created
systems by
thief.
people are in distress, you've created the thief only to punish it. What must we do not to create the thief anymore?
Wow. And Marguerite says, I think there are landlords that penalize the good tenants because of poor experiences with the bad tenants. Not fair. This is a hot. So I'm going to have to find my way to city council. This is a hot button topic
All of
that
you all who want to
deserves.
come to City Council on Thursday, I will be addressing this very issue in City Council on Thursday.
Wow.
And you are all welcome to attend. And I'm always happy to have conversations with you in person. I see
Yeah.
so many wonderful faces in City Council on
Mhm.
Thursdays, but it's lovely to be able to say one on one, have this conversation, to be in the room and to lobby the people who are behind the bar. You can do that as a citizen. You can speak to them and say, here's what I'm thinking. Here's how and this is the space. I will say in the budget address, Sherelle Parker did something which I found absolutely brilliant. And that is when a heckler got up to heckle her, that she took time and space to wait. And she said, if there is any place in the world in democracy, in America, democracy, in Philadelphia, the birthplace of the nation, it is here in these chambers that we must listen to the voice of the people. And so I want us to take that opportunity and go to the chambers and express the voice of the people. That is the time which is allotted for us to do just that.
Yeah. Monica Adams says, child, we call them the Get Over crew, moving legally and never pay a dime. It takes about 3 to 4 months to get them out. David says, people need to move where they can afford. Just like when one wants to buy a house, they buy what they can afford. Who, David?
Yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation.
He says he will be at city council speaking too.
Yes, we
Mm,
David, I look forward to seeing with City Council,
yeah.
and I love public comment at City Council because I love to hear the voice of the people and
Mhm.
to actually hear what people are thinking, what they're saying, what causes them to be fearful or not. I think no legislation has anywhere to go if we haven't listened to the voice of the people. So it is, I feel, the most important portion of City Council's job is to listen first to the voice of the people. After that, can all these other things be done? Without the voice of the people, you are ruling without a measure.
Yeah. And we have to use a little bit of common sense to when we're renting to people. Charmaine says, I had an elderly couple as tenants for years and they paid their rent on time religiously. You can talk oftentimes tell with people, whether they're going to be the get over crew or I just really need some place to live and I'll do my best to pay the rent.
And
Uh,
this issue isn't about the get over people, because I also want to say to you, no matter what business you're in, I don't care what
mhm,
business you're in,
mhm.
there are going to be people in a capitalistic society who are going to take advantage of the system.
Yes.
They're going to do it on the high end, right? We're
Mhm,
going to have billionaires who don't pay any tax at all,
mhm,
and we're going to do it on the low end. So I see the opportunistic behavior in people who come in and take advantage of the little guy in the rental situation. I also see the owner of the building who chooses not to pay taxes because he's found a loophole as a billionaire, and
mhm,
he's going to charge that down to the little man. I see it all over the place. There is that, and that's built into capitalism. If we were going into this thinking everything's going to be pure and we're going to create laws that make everything great and wonderful, that's never going to happen because someone's going to be genius enough to find a loophole. What we are saying is that for the average citizen and for most parts, there are some basic tenets which should be there. If you're existing in a space which is unsafe, uninhabitable, filled with pests or rodents or mold or all sorts of other things, these should not be issues that are problematics for landlords and for people owning buildings to address. And then we're also saying that we need to create spaces for the bottom rung of people who can't afford to live in these other places. People who, by the way, we think they have enough money to exist because that's the minimum wage and that's what we're going to pay them for a 40-hour work week, but then we don't provide them an avenue. And with no avenue, people get creative. And now you see what happens when people are creative.
mhm.
You've
Yeah.
created the thief to punish it.
Yeah. Viola says, I'm home on Thursdays. I watch because of family and friends that ask me questions. Uh, David keeps saying it's about the get over crew. It's not just about the get over crew, though, David. There are terrible landlords, too. Let's talk about the landlords that are just despicable. We've all encountered them. All of us
David
have
already
encountered them
told
on
us
one of
that
them.
David told us in so many words and many questions that he cannot afford to be a landlord if these rules are existence, which to me says you probably can't afford to be a landlord, right? And that's okay. There are a lot of people who are landlords who are sold into this idea that this was going to be a wonderful money making proposition who actually can't afford to be a landlord. I would say to you, David, what would you do if you had this emergency and you needed to use the money that you're saying you can't go on without if you don't have this 3 months of rent?
Mm, yeah.
Right, this is the same issue. So I think what you're saying is that
Mhm.
the landlord business is perhaps too expensive for you to be in.
Yeah. Monica says I may work in property management, but I'm definitely pro tenant. I care about people and have seen things on both sides. We must be fair. That's the way we're going to navigate this. Now, listen, it is 7:39, and I knew this was going to happen because we had not spoken for 6 weeks. Let us discuss Iran.
Ah.
Who? Where do you want to go here? Because,
Well,
baby.
let me. Iran it is the oldest country. I think historically that we can look at as a continuous country. It is a country which, in its greatest history, has never had a successful invasion. And I wanted to just go back to geography class when we were children and we were looking at maps. Iran, if Iran looks something like this, on one side is a great mountain range. On another side is a great mountain range here. Here we have a desert which gets up to 130 degrees during the day, and we have a itsy bitsy piece of water that we get into, which the Strait of Hormuz, which by the way is heavily defended and no large ships can get through. Uh, this baby here is solid, and the place we're trying to get to is down here between the two mountain ranges and after the desert. Geography alone says this is not the war you want to get into.
Amen.
Secondarily to that, you have a group of people which has been preparing to fight the United States of America for a very long time. I want you to understand the U.S. set up Iran several times. We overthrew a previous government to institute the Shah. We then instituted this particular government in order to overthrow the Shah. All of this for a grab of oil, right? It was BP who won that oil from under Iran. And they figured if they had the Shah in there, they would get it. Right. So when we talk about this country and its preparations for dealing with the West, the last thing is that you have in Israel, which has been not so heavily supported by Americans recently for many, many reasons. We've gotten into that before, but certainly the land that they're on, many people in the Middle East and in surrounding countries feel is horrific because Resolution 181 just gave it to them, sort of stolen land, if you will, from the Palestinian people. They have been preparing for this war. And when we have entered into it, we are spending $1 billion, get that right, $1 billion per day to fight this war. We are spending about $1 million, I think it was. I want to check this, but I think it's $1 million per missile to stop the missiles coming from Iran. They're spending 50,000 per missile. Let's do the math. We are bleeding. The oil is coming in control, but the Strait of Hormuz, no ships can go through to get to this problem, right? We're seeing a stock market have a volatility like never before. I warned you about gold prices, ladies and gentlemen. They were through the roof. They're doing some yo-yoing, but they're going to continue doing their thing. Hold on, it will continue to skyrocket, right? Because it's a natural resource that we can tangibly hold on to. And we're watching a war not be fought with truth, but be fought with technology. You have lots of false videos coming out from Israel of people with 5 fingers, people with a pocket that appears and disappears, and this is supposed to be right. Like this is what you're supposed to say. This is official source. This is AI generated X, Y, and Z. This is a new type of war, and one of the things that people have talked about is will Iran attack the banking system in America via virtual things? Will you go to the bank and realize you have no money anymore? Will you realize that all the social security system has been hacked and therefore there's no more such thing as a social security payment? These are the ways that war is now being fought. So I think it's an incredibly stupid war for us to be battling this issue on behalf of Israel. And when you talk to some Iranians say, "Oh, this is wonderful. We didn't want the Ayatollah and this and the other." That's great, and I understand that. And certainly, there have been a lot of injustices by one's own government for the Iranian people. I will not deny that. But I want people to understand America's interest has never been the interest of the country which it is going in to fight. It's always been its own interest. And so anyone who ever believes that America goes in to be the savior of someone else hasn't done the work to dig down far enough to see why we're actually there. And that is not
the loss of life. We keep sending troops. This is the second set of troops, thousands of troops that we're sending in. Our president has intimated that he may.
He said he was going to bomb them for fun. That was yesterday.
Sometimes I can't even repeat the things that he says.
Yeah. Yesterday, I'm going to bomb them for fun. Can you imagine? Leader of the free world.
We will discuss that a little bit more next week because God knows we have been on here long enough. It's my first day back. I am literally tired. So I'm trying to navigate my way through it. David, always a pleasure.
It's good to see you. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Baby. We'll talk soon. This episode of Mornings with Mova is officially over. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. I'll see you when I see you. Bye, everybody. Bye, David. Bye-bye.